Before finishing the harp, I like to make sure that the neck and pillar fits nicely to the body. If the bottom of the pillar comes in and there's a gap, you can glue a shim to the bottom of the pillar. If it doesn't seat all the way to the lip of the pillar, you will need to remove wood from the pillar. You can remove wood with a file, but if you need to remove more than 1/8 of an inch, I would start with a handsaw. Now with a nice fit, I like to install a dowel in the top block and shoulder. This prevents the shoulder from sliding left or right. I start by putting a mark on the left and right side of the shoulder and top block. I like to mark a line on the shoulder and top block for the orientation of the dowel. I make a line connecting the marks I made on both the left side and right side of both the shoulder and top block. Mark the center of each line, and this is where the dowel will be drilled. It's a good idea to make a punch mark for the drill to have a place to start. I use a 3/8 inch drill bit, and I prefer to use a brad point bit. I use masking tape to mark a spot so I do not drill too deep. I mark my depth to be a little bit deeper than about half the length of the dowel. I check my orientation of the drill bit. When I drill, I like to rock it back and forth towards the front and the back of the harp. I do the same with the top block. Finally, check to see how well the neck and pillar fits to the body. It is optional to round over this shoulder area more if you would like. I start by marking the footprint of the shoulder on the top block. I like to carve up to this footprint. This makes it more comfortable when you are playing the harp. You can remove this wood with hand tools and sandpaper. If you are feeling brave, you can use a power sander. Just be precautious because you can remove a lot of wood fast. When using sandpaper, I would start with 40 grit, go up to 80 grit, up to 100 grit, 120, 150, and finish up with 180. Check to see how well the harp flows in the shoulder area now. I like to use random orbit sanders to do a lot of the final sanding. Sanding blocks will be really helpful and help to make the process more efficient. Cabinet scrapers are a fun tool to use too. I like to have 40 grit, 80 grit, 100, 120, 150, and 180 grit sandpaper. For most of the sanding, you'll be able to start out at 120 grit, and I like to finish up to about 180 grit. You can use orbit sanders to get in contoured areas, just be careful so that you don't create flat spots. There are some spots that you will just have to use hand sanding. Sanding is where I most often see people come short in their final project. Sanding encompasses the greatest part of the whole project for building this harp, so just keep at it, it'll make the difference for making the harp really nice. There may be gaps or knots that you may need to fill with filler. There's often tiny gaps along where the trim was installed. You can find wood filler at your local hardware store, just get the right color. I like to use glue mixed with sawdust. You can use super glue, epoxy, or wood glue. I prefer to use epoxy or super glue. When filling around the medallion, I like to make sure I do not get filler in the engravings. I like to use a putty knife to work the filler into the gaps. If you happen to accidentally dent any wood on the harp, you can remove the dents with steam. I use an iron and a wet rag. After sanding the filler and any dents, your harp is ready for finish. We hope that you found this video to be helpful. Now the harp should be ready for finish.